Aloha, Dan McDonald here. I'm here with my friend Kylie, who came out to the island of Kauai with a pretty strong intention to connect with me and ask me some questions. And was I the one that asked you if we could make a video?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, I just wanted to, I had a good feeling about it, so I wanted to, reach out to 5,000 or 10,000 people, at one time and share some of this information about creating super babies. That's what I like to call it. Like I said, there's probably some other scientific name for it. But what we're talking about is, how we can create the environment and the conditions to birth children into this world that have the, most amount of advantage as far as cognitive function, heart health, emotional stability, and physical health, vigorousness, and the activation and the potential, so that we can create geniuses. Because we know that from the information that we've been, exposed to, that we can actually consciously create geniuses. It can be done, but some specific knowledge which was buried long ago for various reasons, which we won't get into, but you're a little bit of a conspiracy nut too, I heard, and so am I. But we can just leave that out for now. And what we'll try to do is just totally focus on the positive of what we can do to help mothers and fathers, and the community, grandmothers, the other children, our society we've become just rugged individualists, and we've lost the community. We'll specifically speak today, I think, on really focusing on the woman and how she can prepare her vessel. And I also want to hopefully touch, if you'll remind me, on what the men can do to what I call hold space, to show up so that they can make the best possible conditions for their woman to thrive, particularly during the 9 months immediately following conception. So like you said, you want it to flow, but I would love it if you just started out with maybe your most burning question.
The most burning question would be just how do you approach a mother and father who are freshly pregnant and have no realm of the health world and all that, and how to teach them that they're having to have a super baby, and that this is an important, amazing gift, not just oh my goodness, I'm pregnant,
So as a doula, which I forgot to mention, they're coming to you after pregnancy.
Yes.
Does anyone come to you prior to conception?
No, but I want to create something like that. Where,
yes.
Like a community where you can reach out to young men and women who haven't had children yet, who want to, and help them decide and see that it is so important to start with themselves first before they conceive.
Exactly. Interesting you'd say that. So there is definitely in the field the creation of such a center in the future. But what I'd like to point out first, in that it's interesting, but in order to really create super genius babies, you want to be ahead of the game. You want to be at least a couple of years ahead of conception. So by the time they get to you and they're already have conceived, that's a little bit different than conscious creation of super baby geniuses. Because in my lineage and the organization that I represent, the Essene Brotherhood, we actually start out 7 years of preparatory work. Now that is for the creation of these avatar children. That's another good way to say it. Now that seems a little bit strange and a little bit extreme, but if we take a little time and realize the 7 cycles within nature always working in the 7 cycles, We want to have those 7 years to truly create a divine vessel, you know. And so that's just step one. Now, I've consulted with probably hundreds of women on this subject, all at varying levels of consciousness. And so what I've found is it's very rare to meet someone and have a consultation with someone who is planning, they're more like a year out or something like that. Like I saw your video, Dan, and my husband and I, we want to have a baby next year. And that's a good thing. So a year is great, time to prepare. But what I'm talking about here is more of a long-term plan. And I'm speaking to the teenage women. I'm also speaking to the grandmothers and the mothers, that they might get this information into them and maybe be able to transmit it in a way and say, you know, hey honey, before you and your husband have a child, it would be a really good idea to take some time to prepare for it in a myriad of ways, you know. And of course, one of those ways, as you know, I'm always talking about the food, but that's not the end of the story by any means. And so my deep heart vision for the women and the men is a true 7-year protocol of living foods, is very foundational. Living foods and fasting as a preparation at the level of the physicality. Now, there is also a great amount of spiritual work that I would love to see people do. And one thing that's really important to understand is to think of, and this is for everyone watching this video, there is something that has been referred to as the complete healing. It's very rare in today's world. And the reason why that is because we're passing on so much degeneration. We're passing on so much ancestral pain.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's just one thing after the other, and I just would love to see more consciousness, a more conscious approach.
I think it's very important to ask your mother what your birth was like, and you know what she experienced, how you came into this planet. And I think that is a part of your healing, is to, if that was traumatic, to see how that affected your whole life and affected how your mother treated you. And that's why it's so important that we support our mothers who are giving birth, and you know, empower them and hold space for them. And a part of that healing of yourself is to recognize how did you come into this world? You know, were you pulled into this world by forceps, or pulled out of your mother's stomach, or you know, were you birthed by a powerful goddess who, you know, just got you on this earth by God's love and grace? And I believe everyone comes that way, but I think it's very important to know your birth story and how you got to this planet.
Yeah, well, I talked to my mom about that actually. The details were still very vague, and I think there was a lot of guilt there. I hope my mom never sees this video. It just was, I couldn't get any of the information because I felt that there was so much guilt there.
Yeah.
That I wasn't getting the information that I was hoping to get, which was just the truth, so that I could understand that. So I had to dive deep into myself and process all that and do a lot of forgiveness.
Yes.
And I looking into medical birth, you know, birth as a medical procedure. Now, why would that be? Well, it's this great way to keep those funnels open. Pharmaceutical drugs, surgeries, cutting out gallbladders, making birth a surgical procedure. Why are they pushing these cesarean sections? It's bizarre. Because if you don't come through the vagina, you're missing out on the most important microbial inoculation for your immune system. And so we're getting more and more of a higher percentage of cesarean sections. Who, you know, again, we were going to stay out of the conspiracy of it all as much as we could, because collectively we're all responsible for not educating ourselves with the truth. But at the same time, we also collectively we buried the truth. The masters wanted us to know the truth. They wrote it down, but we've buried all their scriptures and icons in the in the libraries and we've sealed the doors, and the burning of all the information back then, and the changing of the books, the changing of the Bible. And so we're kind of in the dark now. Although what's interesting though is that, and this is true for everything in this life, and this is a part of my deepest message, is that we don't need to have books. They're helpful, they're inspiring, they're amazing to take some reflection and have some seeds planted. But the greatest thing that we can do is look at nature and think, was this possible 10,000 years ago? Was this possible 100,000 years ago? You know, certain things like, do these forceps grow on trees? These fluorescent lights, these sterile environments with no oxygen. So for me, I know there are many ways to birth a child.
Yes.
The medical route does not seem like the best to me at all. Now, it's just like funny, oh, you had your baby at home? Oh, we were gonna do that, but we wanted our babies to live, you know? It's a fear. And yet, I mean, this is good. I'm seeing a lot of information opening up here. And the animals, they seem to do so much better. They're back up and at it in a few minutes. But they live a natural life. They eat their natural diet. And humanity has been sort of degenerating, and I will just say that it's the Pottinger cat experience the experiments that will help us to see that 4 generations of cooked cats, cooked meat and cooked milk, they could no longer reproduce, their jaw shrank, their fur was worse, their skin was bad, they were gangly and weak, and they had low immunity. But the raw cats, raw milk, raw meat, indefinitely reproduction, strong teeth, good skin. So it's the living foods that is in nature that is a primary foundation for the bones to be able to be more flexible, the more alkaline, as we know, so that birth doesn't have to be this huge thing where this football's coming out of this thing that isn't flexible because of the tightness of our lives. Like we know that in India they sit with their legs crossed, but us Westerners, we don't have the same ability to meditate the way they do. And so each preceding generation is getting tighter and tighter. I wanted to say one last thing before we get to your next question, and that is that, like I said, there's many different ways to birth children, and I know that water birth is one of the more popular. Am I right? But for me, I'd like to say one thing as a crazy wild man is like, it'd be cool if my mom just went out to the mud or the dirt and just plonked me out, and then left the umbilical cord for a while and just held me and chilled out and looked me in my eyes and held me. I want to get the dirt on me. I don't want to be in the hospital with the sterilization. See what I'm saying? We don't want it to be sterile. It's like you want this. You want the microorganisms. You want to be vaginally birthed so that you're picking up on your mother's vaginal microbiome, which inoculates the face and goes into the mouth and completely prepares you, because her vaginal microbiome is a reflection of everything that's going on in the environment. And so it's a preparation. And when we do the C-section, we don't get that, and immunity is lowered, and then the microbiome is lowered, and then when we introduce things like stress or vaccines or the chemicals that are rampant in society, that's when you begin to have those issues with the various birth defects and the autism that is blowing up and skyrocketing right now. So that's just a warm-up. We could go on and on forever, but does this bring up any questions for you?
I guess I'd like to just touch on more of the spiritual aspect. You know, what kind of meditation, where should they go in nature? You know, what should they do when they are out in their, you know, what should they meditate on? And
this is some good stuff. This is important because, you know, I'm going to mention the living foods. For me, it's a religion. Because it has to be, because what was common sense and the eternal law of the living foods is just, it's like a foreign, alien, but yet that is the law of life. So that's one aspect of it, but the spiritual aspect of it. So let's start off with what's popping into my head, and that's the relationship between the man and the woman. indigenous cultures, a child is raised by a village. And we're talking about the modern world now. And hopefully we're going to be creating communities where, we are all involved in loving that child, serving that child consciously, because our avatars, and I've read the stories on this, the creation of the Superman, our avatars in our society and our master yogis, they were consciously created by community, and everyone was involved in serving the male and the female counterpart to this process which the community was involved in. John the Baptist, Jesus, Buddha, etc. I won't get too religious about it, but it's just some great information out there if you can find it about those kinds of things. Conscious creation of avatars and geniuses, and spiritual geniuses particularly, where they are where the brain and the nerves and the glands are all available for the highest levels of receptivity prior, during, and after birth, so that these children are just receptive vessels, which they are throughout the entire process of gestation. So the male and the female, which is the context which we'll be speaking of, because that's how we're doing it in our society. A man meets a woman wants a child, the man loves the woman, and he just is like, you're my queen and I'm gonna do whatever you want. I'm not saying that all the men aren't the ones that want to have children too, but generally the woman is the one who has this deep desire, deep calling. It's like just what I'm here to do. And so she is unconsciously or subconsciously looking for the right man to do that. That's another broad subject too, but in our society we'll kind of keep it politically correct, and the husband and the wife. And I think that's a really great way to do it in a committed relationship. And my recommendation is to the men and to the women to be very conscious about making sure that, what I'd like to say is, if a man is going to do this, be a man and realize you have, if you're doing the DTM program, you've got a 25-year commitment to the creation of a super child. Now, for the average person, that it's really actually more of a, well, we would technically call it in our society an 18 plus 9 months program. So like a 20-year program. And so when we add the 18 years to adulthood in our society as a technically, politically correct, baseline, and then you add the 7 years. It's a 25-year commitment that you're going to make until your child is an adult and out on their own. And so I want the men to think about this, anyone who's watching this, to, if you're going to do it, be committed and be ready for a wild ride, and be ready to man up at every corner. You know what I mean? Because there's going to be some surprises, there's going to be some twists, there's going to be changes, there's going to be hormone fluctuations and evolutionary progression. And in nature, what's interesting is that, it's really 3 or 4 years there's this dance in nature that is a 3 or 4 year dance, where the male and the female, there's the peacock, and then the boom, there is the inoculation or the conception, and then the man is holding that space, and there's a hormonal process that's very biological, and it's a 3 or 4 year process. That is the actual biochemistry of nature. Now, our society is different, and I'm being very sensitive but I want everyone to know that I've thought about this subject more than any other subject and looked into it a lot, and it's very interesting. So the end of the hormonal process, where the magnetism is the highest and the male feels responsible, is about a 3 or 4 year process. And then something in him shifts, and something in the woman shifts as well. And the politically correct society is actually a much more long-term committed program, which, with a higher level of consciousness And if you're a stage 3 man or a stage 3 woman, you can easily navigate this process. Most of our society are stage 2, male and female, and so it becomes more difficult, and there's a lot more drama and a lot less stability. So we want to be, like we started out with, on point with ourselves before we do this. We want to make sure that we are ready. Now there's biological clocks ticking and all that kind of thing too, so there's a lot to be considered, but we're talking about the ideal here, and then everyone who's watching this video can take this information, take what they want, and use it for however they feel it fits into their paradigm and perception, you know.
Yes, and also seek out that community that will fulfill that and will help you create that child and create yourself within that. You know, if you feel called to move to Kauai, you know, and you know that there's a community there that supports that, and you know, you can pick your fruit off the trees and you can meditate by the ocean, and you feel called to do that, do it. And if you feel called to bring women together in your community and say, here's this information, let's strive together to manifest this right here and now, and let's create this community that we want, and let's help our children and help our humanity.
There's some seeds planted for sure then about being supported. Yes. So that kind of segues into what another really important point that I like to make when I'm speaking on the subject, and that is making sure that the man is ready to absorb. And do what he's got to do. Maybe it's a sacrifice on two people's part to really create an environment that is super stable and harmonious. And so for me, I envision the man up in his game, just real quiet, like going to work, making sure that the finances are stable. It'd be a really good idea. I'm recommending like that the finances are really, really stable. Like the income is twice as much as it needs to be, because stressing on finances while the child is being formed and the nervous system is being formed, it's going to be picking up on that, and you really don't want to transmit any kind of stress. So that's why you know, the finances are stable, the relationship is stable, the communication is good, the health is good, and the environment, which is the absolute key, which is what all those things are. Yes. Because it's the environment that trumps everything. Because everything is affected by the field. And so a lot of times we're not conscious of the fact that whatever vibration the mom and dad are carrying, if there's anger there, if there's resentment there, if there's fighting, if there's stress, all of that goes into the child. So you want to think to yourself, you know, how do I want my child to be? Do you love your child? And if you do, then of course you would want to eat the best food that you possibly could and have the best environment, the best relationship, the least amount of stress, and the most amount of harmony, so that that child's nervous system, instead of being fear or anger based vibrations, it's a harmonious. And of course the greatest harmony is within nature. And so even if we don't find at present any of these you know, birthing centers or communities, which there are, you want to reach out and get some support. And you may want to, even before conception, start planning on where you're going to find that support. Hey grandma, will you support me? I really would love your help and your insight, and if there's anything you can contribute, your love, your time, please help. Mom, if you know, we're going to do this, and any help that you can give me would be great. And any support that you can get anywhere, so that people are feeding into the greatest amount of love and potential for that future child. And we're just not thinking about this, I don't think, enough. I mean, you're in the field, so you know that it's a lot of it, there's a lot of unconsciousness.
Most people, they get pregnant and then they realize oh, I'm bringing a life into the world. I have to stop drinking coffee and, you know, stop doing this and that. And it's so much more than that. And that's a lot of women I come across that's when they kind of have that awakening where they realize they come more in tune with their body because their body's changing so much and they don't realize, you know, what is happening and just they become more sensitive to what is happening. And that's just...
They're waking up to the fact that they have all these addictions that they weren't aware of. And that's why, so a lot of times the women that you've run across, it was an accident or it wasn't conscious childbearing. So, okay, so that's, and then they've got the coffee habit, maybe the cigarette habit, the stress habit. Finances aren't all put together. The relationship isn't all harmonious. And so now it's just a mess. So it's one messy thing and we're just passing that on. And I think that's not really the most fair thing to do to a child. I mean, we're not going to complain and say we're victims, but wouldn't it have been nice if we didn't have to spend the first 40 years of our lives tracking back through all of the pain body, and all the unresolved issues of generational curses. Now, luckily, I'd like to say, this is tooting my own horn here, but I decided a long time ago, I'm a cycle breaker. I'm not going to live my life on drugs. I'm not going to beat my children, you know what I'm saying? And I'm going to be there for them as much as I can. And that was something that, see, I was not prepared. I had to learn that along the way. And so my daughter turned 16 yesterday and my other daughter is 18, and I'm still in the middle of the process of sort of cleaning up my own mess and letting them know that I did the best I could. I wasn't conscious, I wasn't aware, I wasn't financially prepared, I wasn't, the relationship wasn't the ideal. And so I'm not saying that it isn't totally perfect, but imagine what we could do in society if we approached everything with consciousness. This is just one aspect of society, but imagine if we approached all areas of society with as much consciousness and awareness as possible. Our health, our finances. What other subjects are there in society?
School,
education. It's like, I mean, we don't even want to get into that, but it's almost like indoctrination of a little bit less than mediocrity. And there's a reason for that. And it's, again, it comes back to a collective. When we're less mature and evolved, we're like, they're doing it, it's the global elite. But if we were more conscious and we were more aware and we were creating a field, more of us were creating a field, that, you know what, BS would not fly. It just wouldn't be allowed to arise. So what we're doing, I've always say this about everything, because we get into politics and we get into the conspiracies, it's that you are the one. You are the changer of the world. Each individual watching this video, there's my experience and opinion, and this is what makes my life so amazing, and what I'm grateful for is that I feel like I am the one who's going to change the world. That way I don't have to go to you and try to nitpick your diet and tell you, oh, you're only getting 8 miles to the gallon in your car, you're ruining the planet, I have a Prius, you know, you're doing this, you're doing that. It's kind of like, what am I doing? What am I bringing into this world? What am I allowing to flow through me? What am I intending? What kind of energy field am I bringing? Just me. I can't fix you or change you. I can't go into you and change you. Only you can do that. Only you can decide to align yourself with something. I call it divinity. And I say, and I know that I'm just this human thing, but I know that there's something that is a divine intelligence. That is what the mothers and the fathers would want to start surrendering into, and everyone everywhere around the entire world as it relates to anything. That's just my little gift that I've given myself and that I give my friends and I give my children, and what that's allowed in this life is a constant evolution and a decent level of humility, knowing that you cannot transcend the law, and we are going to get what we create, and so we can't really complain as victims. The being 100% responsible for what we're emanating is what we're going to be attracting and creating. And I've seen this time and time again, and as I've cleaned myself up, less and less of those things that are unpleasant, that were unconscious inside of me, are not showing up in this experience. So that conscious childbearing is an awareness of, do you get yourself right? Get yourself harmonious. There's constant progression. There's a lack of ease, there's anger, there's issues there. And I'm not saying, because it might take you till you're like 92 to really get it, to get your complete healing, where you see the light and you realize everyone is innocent. So, and you're not going to be making babies at 92. But my recommendation is to be realistic. If you can go for the complete healing, which is, I guess I'll have to make another video, because that really is a whole nother subject in itself, but it's related to the living foods and the fasting, so that you can not only burn up the physical toxins, which are everywhere, but during that process of cleansing and healing, the emotional toxins are released, and then the mind, through the process of fasting, silence, solitude, and a deeper regeneration, going into the yogi cave for 6 months, or a year, 4 years, 5 years, however long it takes for you to step out, if you can. So many of us are on the rat wheel, but you can make a lot of difference in your life. If you're stuck, you need to look at why. You can always simplify. There's nothing like being barefoot in nature and eating a simple, tiny little meal of something fresh and natural that costs $2-3. I'm not saying you're gonna move from your condo, but we get stuck, and our society's like that. And so you gotta have a big screen in each room, and then you gotta have the best cable, because you gotta have 450 channels, which you pay $120 for. You know what I mean? Then you gotta have each kid wants a video game room, and then they have to have soccer and trumpet and everything else. And you could just take them outside and sit them on a rock and listen to the ocean, and everything that you need to know and learn will come to you, because it's already inside of us. So it's the divine intelligence. It's already there. And the divine intelligence is, what is it that's keeping this rock spinning around that big bright sun, that star in the sky, at a perfect 1 inch closer, we're gonna burn. 1 inch further, we're gonna freeze. That divine intelligence has kept this planet spinning around that star in the sky perfectly for billions of years to create this life. I think it knows a little something. And when we